As You Wish opens with a premise so familiar it could belong to countless teen comedies. A girl convinced she's in love with the boy next door. But the story's real intelligence lies in almost immediately undercutting that premise, revealing that what Aaliyah has actually been feeling all along has nothing to do with Chad, and everything to do with his sister Penny. And this initial misdirection deserves to be read as more than a comedic twist, because it captures something genuinely true about how many queer women first experience their own desire, filtered at first through a socially legible, easily nameable crush on someone of the opposite sex. A crush that feels safe precisely because it requires no explanation, no coming out, no confrontation with a truth that might complicate everything, while the actual feeling, the one that matters, hides in plain sight just adjacent to the sanctioned narrative, waiting to be recognized. Aaliyah's confusion about the true object of her affection is not naivety so much as a demonstration of how thoroughly compulsory heterosexuality can structure even our own private understanding of our feelings, because she has been handed a script, girl likes boy, and has been dutifully trying to fit her actual emotional experience into that script's shape. And it takes the story's magical device, the love spell she enlists Penny's help to cast, to finally force a confrontation between the narrative she believed she was living and the one that was actually true. And there is something quietly moving about the fact that Aaliyah has to go to Penny specifically to help her secure Chad, unknowingly asking the person she actually loves to help manufacture affection from someone else entirely. A scenario that will feel achingly familiar to any queer woman who has ever confided a crush on a man to the very woman she was actually drawn to, using that confidence as a strange, backward way of staying close to someone she couldn't yet name as the real source of her longing. The mechanics of the spell itself, and its unintended effect on Penny rather than Chad, deserve careful reading, because rather than treating Penny's shift in presentation as something being done to her against her will, the story is better understood, and more meaningfully told, as a moment of magical catalysis rather than coercion, the spell functioning less like an external force imposing change on an unwilling body, and more like a mirror suddenly showing Penny something true about herself that she may not have had the occasion or the courage to explore before. And this reading matters because it transforms what could otherwise feel like a non-consensual transformation into something closer to an accelerated, externally triggered moment of self-recognition, the magical equivalent of finally trying on a version of yourself that fits. And many queer women, particularly those who have discovered through the course of their own lives that a more masculine, gender-nonconforming presentation feels truer to them than whatever femininity they were handed by default, will recognize something valuable in this depiction, the sense that the real self was always available, waiting just beneath a more conventional presentation, requiring only the right catalyst, whether that catalyst is magic, community, language, or simply time and safety, to become visible. What makes Aaliyah's experience of this transformation so significant is that her attraction to Penny does not waver or complicate itself as Penny's presentation shifts. If anything, the story suggests her feelings deepen and clarify, and this detail carries real weight, because it models something valuable about the nature of authentic attraction, that it is not contingent on a partner performing a particular narrow version of femininity or masculinity, but responds instead to something more essential, a recognition of the actual person underneath whatever presentation she inhabits. And Aaliyah's unwavering interest as Penny becomes more visibly herself suggests that what Aaliyah has been drawn to all along was never a surface aesthetic but Penny's actual presence, her actual self, which the spell has simply made more fully visible rather than fundamental. This has significant resonance for conversations within queer community about gender expression and attraction, because it gently dramatizes an experience many queer women share, loving a woman more fully and more clearly as she becomes more authentically herself. Whether that authenticity moves toward greater masculinity, greater androgyny, or any other expression that diverges from default expectations, and stories that affirm this kind of attraction, love that follows and celebrates a partner's self-discovery rather than remaining anchored to an earlier, less authentic version of her, offer real value to audiences navigating their own relationships with partners who are still discovering or refining how they want to present themselves to the world. The magical frame of the story also does useful thematic work by literalizing something that in real life usually happens gradually and internally, the process of a person's outward presentation catching up to some longer-held internal truth. And by compressing this process into a single spell, the story is able to focus attention on the emotional core of what's happening. Two women discovering each other more fully in real time, rather than getting lost in the more mundane mechanics of gradual social transition that a more realist telling might need to address. And this compression, while clearly a fantastical device rather than a realistic model, still manages to capture something emotionally true about the experience of watching someone you love become more visibly themselves. And finding that shift only deepens rather than threatens your connection to them. Penny's own interior experience throughout this transformation deserves attention as well, because however the story chooses to depict her processing this rapid shift, there is real dramatic and emotional value in showing her curiosity, uncertainty, and eventual comfort with this newly visible aspect of herself. Rather than skipping past her interiority in favor of focusing only on Aaliyah's reaction, and a story invested in taking women's interior lives seriously would give Penny real space to sit with what's happening to her, to ask her own questions about what this means to arrive at her own relationship with this new visibility on her own terms, even as external magic has accelerated the timeline, because her consent to and comfort with this new expression of herself matters just as much as Aaliyah's attraction to it. And the story is strongest when it treats Penny not simply as the object of Aaliyah's newly clarified desire, but as a full participant discovering something valuable about her own identity, in tandem with falling in love. There is also something worth noting in the story's title itself, As You Wish, which carries a double resonance worth sitting with, on one hand referring to the literal mechanics of spellcasting and desire made manifest, but on the other hand gesturing towards something more emotionally significant. The idea of finally getting to exist as you actually wish to exist. Of being loved not despite some deviation from expectation, but specifically because of the truer self that deviation reveals. And this double meaning elevates the premise beyond its comedic magical trappings into something that speaks meaningfully to the broader queer experience of finally being able to inhabit a version of yourself, whether in gender expression, in openly loved same-sex desire, or both simultaneously, that finally matches what you have always known to be true internally. And Aaliyah's steady, undiminished attraction throughout this process suggests that real love, the kind worth building a life around, has always been oriented toward that truer self, rather than toward whatever more conventional presentation might have come before it, offering both these characters and the queer women watching them a hopeful vision of what it looks like to be loved not in spite of authenticity, but precisely because of it.